His phone wouldn't stop buzzing in his pocket, that angry little vibration that feels like a warning you can't read yet. Malik stood at the register with a cold paper cup sweating rings onto the counter, his hands open like he was trying not to look guilty for existing. The restaurant manager didn't even look up. She took Malik's coins, quarters, dimes, pennies, then flicked them into a plastic takeout bag like scraps, the kind you'd toss into a trash bin without thinking. The coins clattered against the bag with a cheap, humiliating sound. Malik swallowed hard and stared at the name tag on her chest. Tina. He wanted to say something. Anything. But the words got stuck behind his teeth like a cough. Behind him, the line shifted, people sighing, shoes squeaking on the tile. Malik felt heat crawl up his neck. He hadn't been spoken to like a person in days. And the manager still didn't know who he was. Malik wasn't dressed like an owner. That was the whole point. He wore a navy hoodie with the zipper half broken, jeans that had seen too many laundromat cycles, and sneakers that had lost their bright white months ago. He could have put on a suit. He had one. It lived in a garment bag in his closet, like a version of himself he didn't know how to be anymore. But he'd been told, quietly, carefully, by his attorney that if he wanted to understand what he'd bought, he should walk in as a regular customer first. See how they treat people, Mr. Levin had said on the phone, voice low like it was advice you only give once. You learn more that way than any spreadsheet will tell you. So Malik came in on a gray Tuesday in Cleveland, Ohio, the kind of day where the sky looked like someone forgot to finish coloring it. A chain restaurant off a busy road, wedged between a pharmacy and a mattress store. Inside, it was warm but not cozy. The air smelled like fryer oil, lemon cleaner, and sweet barbecue sauce that clung to your hoodie long after you left. There were sports highlights on the wall TVs and a playlist of throwback pop that made everyone pretend they were in a better mood than they were. Malik hadn't planned for the change situation. He'd ordered the cheapest thing that still counted as a meal, a half sandwich, side salad, water. His debit card declined once. That part was real. Not because he didn't have money, but because he'd frozen his accounts 2 weeks earlier when he signed the closing papers, when everything in his life had flipped from stable to strange. He didn't want auto payments slipping through while he figured out what the next 30 days looked like. It was a control thing, and he knew it was a problem even while he was doing it. He'd told himself he'd use cash. He'd counted it twice in his car. But at the register, under the bright lights, with people behind him and Tina's eyes already annoyed, his brain did that thing it did lately, like a file cabinet drawer jammed halfway open. He was short by a couple dollars. He felt it instantly in his chest, that familiar drop, even though he could have covered it 100 different ways. I've got it, he said, voice too quiet. Tina finally looked at him then, not in a curious way, in a measuring way. Her eyeliner was sharp, her hair pulled into a tight ponytail, and she had the exhausted posture of someone who'd been holding a team together with tape. She glanced at his hoodie, his hands, the old phone in his palm with the cracked corner. She didn't ask if he wanted to remove something from the order. She didn't suggest a smaller size. She just exhaled like he was a delay. Just give me what you have, she said. He placed the coins down carefully, like politeness could make them less embarrassing. Quarters first. Then dimes. Then the pennies he hated the most, tiny and loud and too honest. Tina scooped them fast and dumped them into that takeout bag, not even the register drawer, like she didn't want his money touching the place. It wasn't the coins themselves. It was the message. You're messy. You don't belong. Hurry up. Malik's ears rang. He could feel people looking. Not angry looks, worse. Blank looks. The kind you can't argue with. He stepped aside with his receipt in one hand and that plastic bag in the other, the coins clinking every time he moved. He walked toward an empty two-top near the window. Outside, cars sprayed slush on the road. A man in a high-vis jacket smoked near the dumpster, shoulders hunched against the cold. Malik sat down and stared at the menu board like it might explain what just happened. He wasn't new to being sized up. He'd been black in America his whole life. He'd grown up in Detroit, in a neighborhood where you learned early to keep your hands visible and your voice calm, not because you were scared all the time, but because you were tired of the consequences. He'd gotten scholarships, done the whole climb, college, then a job in logistics, then management, then starting his own small consulting firm from his apartment during the pandemic. He'd lived on cold ramen, then on credit cards, then on stubborn hope. He'd built something. He'd paid off debts. He'd sent his mom money when her water heater broke. He'd watched friends give up, watched others get lucky, watched himself keep going because stopping felt like disappearing. And now, after 2 years of saving and a messy divorce that had split his life into before and after, Malik had done something he still didn't fully understand. He'd bought this place. Not as a flex. Not as a revenge plot. As a step. As a way to turn his consulting work into something physical, something he could improve, something that could maybe employ people well. He'd partnered with an older investor who wanted out of the business, a man who'd liked Malik's numbers and called him articulate, like it was a surprise. Malik had ignored that. He'd ignored a lot of things. Because he wanted a reset. Except resets weren't clean. They were messy. They came with moments like this, where you sat alone with a plastic bag of coins on a sticky table and tried not to let your face show what your chest was doing. His phone buzzed again. He pulled it out and saw a text from his sister, Nia. "You good? Mom said you sounded weird earlier." Malik stared at the words until they blurred. He didn't want to worry her. He didn't want to admit how thin his patience felt lately, how every small disrespect hit like a reminder that no matter what he achieved, there were people who would still treat him like he was in the way. He typed, "Yeah, just working," and hit send. A server walked past, a young guy with a nose ring and tired eyes. He glanced at Malik's table and slowed. "Hey man," he said, voice casual but not cold. "You need anything? Water refill, or?" Malik held up the plastic bag without meaning to. The coins chimed softly. The server's eyebrows lifted, and for a second Malik expected the same look Tina gave him. The same impatient annoyance. Instead, the server frowned like it actually bothered him. "They put your change in a bag?" he asked. Malik forced a shrug, like it didn't matter. Like he wasn't still burning. "It's fine," he said. "No big deal." The server looked toward the register, then back at Malik. "That's not cool," he said, quieter now. "You want me to?" "No," Malik said too quickly. He didn't want a scene. He didn't want pity. He didn't want to be the kind of customer who made someone else's shift worse. He'd spent too many years being careful not to be seen as difficult. The server hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, I'll grab you fresh water anyway." When the server walked away, Malik sat still, letting the small kindness land without trying to push it away. It shouldn't have mattered so much. It was just water. It was just one person noticing. But lately, Malik realized, he was running on empty in places he didn't talk about. The divorce had left him with silence in his apartment that was too loud. The business calls filled his calendar, but not his life. He'd gotten used to being productive. He hadn't gotten used to being alone. Across the room, Tina laughed at something a cook said. It wasn't a mean laugh. It was just a laugh. She looked like a person in that moment, not a manager with sharp edges. Malik watched her and felt the complicated truth of it settle in him. Most people weren't villains. They were tired. They were stressed. They were protecting themselves in small, ugly ways. And sometimes those ways landed on the wrong person. Malik stared at the plastic bag again. He could picture himself marching back to the register, telling Tina who he was, watching her face drain of color. He could picture the apology, the scramble, the sudden sweetness. But he didn't want that. He wanted something harder. Something more real. He wanted respect that didn't require a reveal. He took a slow breath and looked around the restaurant like he was seeing it for the first time. The sticky high chairs stacked near the bathrooms. The hostess stand with a cracked tablet. The worn carpet near the soda fountain. The way the staff moved fast but not together, like they were each carrying their own load. This wasn't just a restaurant. It was a system. And it was full of people who had learned, in one way or another, to brace themselves. Malik's phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from Mr. Levin with the subject line, "Final Docs, signed." Malik opened it. The first line read, "Congratulations, Malik. You're officially the owner as of today." He sat there with the message glowing on his screen, the coins still in their little bag like evidence, and felt a strange mix of exhaustion and responsibility. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just reality. He didn't know what he was going to do next. He only knew he couldn't pretend this didn't matter. Not to him. Not to the people who worked here. Not to the customers who walked in with tired faces and exact change. The server returned and set down a fresh glass of water, ice clinking. "Here you go," he said, then lowered his voice like he didn't want Tina to hear. "For real though, you deserve better than that." Malik looked up at him. The kid's name tag said, Leo. His expression wasn't dramatic. It was simple. Honest. Like he was saying it because it was true. Malik nodded once. "Thanks," he said. His throat felt tight. "I appreciate it." Leo hesitated. "You new around here?" he asked, trying to make conversation. Malik looked toward the register again, toward Tina, toward the whole place. He could feel the weight of the email in his pocket, the kind of secret that could change every interaction in the room. "Yeah," Malik said carefully. "You could say that." He wrapped his fingers around the cold water glass and let the chill steady him. Outside, the traffic kept moving, people going places, lives continuing without pause. Inside, Malik sat with a small bag of coins and a bigger truth. He wasn't here to be recognized. He was here to decide what kind of owner he was going to be. Malik didn't come back the next day. Or the day after that. He told himself it was strategy, that distance would help him think clearly, but the truth was simpler and harder to admit. He needed time to cool off. The moment with the coins kept replaying in his head at inconvenient times, while brushing his teeth, while waiting at red lights, while lying awake listening to the hum of the refrigerator in his apartment. Each replay came with a different emotion. Embarrassment first. Then anger. Then something quieter and heavier that he didn't have a clean name for. On Friday morning, he sat at the small kitchen table that doubled as his desk. His laptop was open to spreadsheets, payroll projections, supplier contracts. Numbers made sense. Numbers stayed where you put them. People didn't. He rubbed his eyes and leaned back, staring at the faint water stain on the ceiling he kept meaning to ask the landlord about. His phone buzzed with a voicemail notification from an unknown number. He almost ignored it. Unknown numbers usually meant sales calls or wrong numbers or reminders for appointments he didn't remember making. But something made him tap it. "Hey, this is Leo. From the restaurant." The voice was hesitant, unsure if it was crossing a line. "I found your number on the receipt copy. I hope that's okay. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry about the other day. Not like, officially or anything. Just, yeah. Anyway, hope you're doing all right." The message ended with a soft click. Malik stared at his phone longer than necessary. Leo hadn't needed to do that. It didn't fix anything. It didn't undo the moment. But it sat differently in Malik's chest than the rest of the week had. It felt like a hand on his shoulder instead of a weight. He replayed the voicemail once more, then set the phone down and exhaled. This, he realized, was the unexpected part of change no one talked about. Not the big wins or public moments, but the small, awkward connections that cracked you open when you weren't guarding yourself. By Saturday afternoon, Malik found himself driving back to the restaurant without fully deciding to. The sky was brighter than earlier in the week, the kind of pale blue that suggested spring was trying to show up early but didn't want to promise anything. He parked farther away this time and sat in his car for a full minute with the engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel. He wasn't nervous exactly. He was resistant. Part of him wanted to stay in control, to plan the perfect entrance, the perfect reveal, the perfect conversation. Another part of him was tired of performing. He walked in wearing the same hoodie, same jeans. He noticed different things this time. The way the front door stuck slightly before opening. The scuff marks along the baseboards. The low murmur of conversations blending with the sizzle from the kitchen. It felt less hostile now, not because it had changed, but because he wasn't bracing himself for impact. Leo was at the host stand, tapping at the tablet. When he looked up and recognized Malik, his face shifted into surprise, then something like relief. "Hey," he said. "You're back." "Yeah," Malik said. "I had some time." Leo nodded, glancing toward the register like he was checking who was on shift. "You want a table, or?" "I was actually hoping to talk," Malik said, then paused. He hated how formal that sounded. "If that's okay." Leo's eyebrows lifted. Sure. I'm not in trouble, right?" He tried to smile. Malik shook his head. "No. Nothing like that." They stepped slightly aside near the drink station, out of the main flow. Leo leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely. Malik noticed how young he was up close. Early 20s, maybe. Dark circles under his eyes. Someone who probably worked 2 jobs or at least one job that felt like 2. "I got your voicemail," Malik said. "Thanks for that." "You didn't have to." Leo shrugged. "It just didn't sit right with me. The way that went down." Malik nodded slowly. "Yeah, same." There was a beat of silence. Malik felt the familiar urge to minimize, to smooth things over so no one felt uncomfortable. He recognized it now as a habit, not a virtue. So he didn't rush. "How long you been working here?" Malik asked. "Almost a year," Leo said. "Since I dropped out of community college. Needed money. Thought it'd be temporary." He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You know how that goes." Malik did know. He nodded. "Who trained you?" Leo tilted his head. "Tina. Mostly. She's tough, but she knows the place." "Tough how?" Leo hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "She's under a lot of pressure. Corporate's always on her about numbers. Labor costs. Speed. Customer complaints." He sighed. "Sometimes that pressure goes sideways." Malik felt something shift inside him. Not defensiveness. Understanding. "Does it happen often?" he asked. "Stuff like what happened with me." Leo glanced toward the register again. Tina was there, tapping at the screen, jaw tight. "Not always like that," he said. "But yeah, sometimes." Malik absorbed that. This wasn't about one bad moment. It was about a pattern shaped by stress, power, and who absorbed the fallout. "Can I ask you something?" Leo said. "Sure." "Why did you come back?" Leo asked. "Most people wouldn't." Malik smiled faintly. "Honestly, I almost didn't. But you did." "Yeah." Malik took a breath. "Because I'm trying to get better at not running when something feels bad." Leo nodded like that made sense to him in a way he hadn't expected. At that moment, Tina walked over, her expression professional but guarded. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, eyes flicking between them. "Yeah," Malik said. He met her gaze, steady but calm. "Everything's fine." Tina looked at him for a second longer than necessary, then nodded and walked away. Leo let out a quiet breath. "You sure?" "I am," Malik said. And he realized it was true. Not because the past week hadn't hurt, but because he was finally engaging with it instead of swallowing it whole. They stood there a moment longer, the noise of the restaurant filling the space between them. Malik felt the urge to say it then, to tell Leo everything. Who he was. What the email meant. How the power dynamics were about to shift. But again, he stopped himself. Change didn't always start with announcements. Sometimes it started with listening. "I'm gonna grab a seat," Malik said. "But thanks for talking." Leo smiled, this time fully. "Any time." Malik sat by the window again, but it felt different now. Less like exile. More like observation. He watched the rhythm of the place, the small inefficiencies, the moments of kindness and friction. He thought about leadership, about how easy it was to replicate the same systems that once wore you down. The hardest part, he realized, wasn't proving who he was. It was deciding who he wanted to be before anyone else decided for him. Malik sat in his car, afterward longer than he meant to. The engine was off, the windows fogging slightly as his breath warmed the glass. He watched people come and go from the restaurant, families with kids tugging at their hands, a delivery driver checking his phone, a couple arguing quietly before walking in together anyway. Life didn't pause for realizations. It just kept moving. The voicemail from Leo replayed again in his head, not the words exactly, but the feeling of someone stepping out of their lane just to be decent. That shouldn't have felt rare. But it did. And that fact bothered Malik more than the coins ever had. Back in his apartment that night, the silence pressed in on him. He reheated leftovers he barely tasted and ate standing at the counter, scrolling through emails on his phone. Messages from vendors. A reminder about an insurance payment. A calendar alert for a meeting with the minority partner on Monday. Everything looked normal on the screen. That was the problem. His life, on paper, was stable, successful, even. But inside, something felt unresolved, like a conversation he'd walked away from years ago and never finished. He poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the sink, staring at his reflection in the dark window. 38 years old. Tired eyes. A face that had learned to stay neutral in public. He thought about how often he'd been told to be patient, to be professional, to not take things personally. Advice that sounded reasonable until you realized it mostly benefited people who never had to swallow their pride just to get through a day. His phone buzzed. A text from Nia. "You sure you're okay? You've been quiet." Malik typed back, "Thinking a lot. That's all." Before he could talk himself out of it. He went to bed but didn't sleep. His mind kept circling the same question from different angles. Was he really ready for this? Not ownership on paper, not the numbers, not the meetings. But the human weight of it. The fact that every decision he made would ripple outward. That he could easily become another Tina if he wasn't careful. Another tired person passing pressure down the line because no one had shown them another way. By Sunday afternoon, the tension inside him had sharpened into something like restlessness. He found himself back at the restaurant again, this time parking closer, this time with intention. He didn't plan to reveal himself today either. He just needed to see it one more time. To be sure his reaction wasn't just ego dressed up as principle. Inside, it was busier than before. A church crowd, judging by the clothes and the cadence of conversation. Malik stood near the wall pretending to check his phone, watching how orders were taken, how mistakes were handled. He noticed how Tina moved fast, efficient but rigid, correcting people in clipped tones. He noticed how Leo softened interactions without slowing them down, how customers leaned toward him without realizing why. Then it happened again. Not to Malik this time. To an older black woman counting bills with careful fingers. Tina's shoulders stiffened as the line grew. Malik saw the exact moment patience tipped into irritation. The sigh. The glance. The sharpness creeping into her voice. "We don't have all day," Tina said, not yelling, but loud enough. The woman flinched. Just a little. Enough that Malik felt it in his gut. That was it. The breaking point wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No confrontation. Just clarity. Malik realized that if he stayed quiet, this would keep happening. Not because Tina was cruel, but because the system rewarded speed over dignity, and silence over accountability. And Malik was now part of that system whether he liked it or not. He stepped outside before he could overthink it. The cold air hit his face hard, grounding him. He pulled out his phone and scrolled until he found Mr. Levin's number. "Hey," Malik said when the call connected. "I know the plan was to ease in. Observe for a few weeks." Mr. Levin hummed. "And I don't think I can," Malik said. His voice surprised him by how steady it sounded. "Not like that." There was a pause. "You sure?" Mr. Levin asked. "Once you step in, things change. You can't unring that bell." "I know," Malik said. He watched his breath fog the air. "That's kind of the point." He ended the call and stood there for a moment, heart pounding. This wasn't about correcting a manager or proving a point. It was about something deeper. About deciding whether he was willing to risk discomfort, conflict, and being misunderstood in order to build something better. Or whether he'd keep protecting himself by staying invisible. He went back inside. Tina was at the register. Leo caught Malik's eye from across the room, a question in his expression. Malik gave a small nod, not of reassurance, but of resolve. He walked up to the counter and waited his turn like everyone else. When Tina looked up, her professional mask slid into place. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Yes," Malik said. His heart hammered, but his voice stayed calm. "I'd like to talk. Somewhere quiet." Tina frowned. "If this is about a complaint, you can." "It's not a complaint," Malik said gently. "It's a conversation." Something in his tone made her hesitate. She glanced at the line, then back at him. "5 minutes," she said. "In the office." The office was small, cluttered with binders and a humming printer. Tina crossed her arms, defensive now. "So." Malik took a breath. This was the moment he'd been circling since the coins hit plastic. "My name is Malik," he said. "And as of this week, I own this location." The words landed quietly. No drama. No raised voice. Tina's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, then closed. What? "I'm not here to fire you," Malik said quickly. "And I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm here because what I saw matters. How people are treated here matters." Tina sank into the chair behind her desk, the fight draining out of her. "I didn't know," she said, almost to herself. "I swear I didn't." "I know," Malik said. And he meant it. That's the problem. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was honest. For the first time since he'd walked in days ago, Malik didn't feel small. He felt responsible. And that scared him more than anything. The office felt smaller once the words were out. The printer hummed, the fluorescent light buzzed faintly, and Tina sat with her hands folded like she didn't know where to put them anymore. Malik stayed standing for a moment, then pulled out the chair across from her and sat down slowly. "Not to claim power. To share the space." "I know this is a lot," Malik said. "I'm not expecting anything right now. Not an apology. Not excuses." Tina nodded, eyes fixed on the desk. "I've been here 6 years," she said quietly. "I started as a server. Worked my way up. Corporate keeps cutting hours, raising targets. Every week it's a new email about speed scores and complaints." Her voice tightened. "I'm tired." Malik listened. Not because listening solved everything, but because it was the part people skipped when they were in charge. He heard the exhaustion beneath her words, the fear of losing control in a job that barely let her breathe. "I get tired," Malik said. "Different kind. Same result." She looked up then, surprised. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. "What I saw," Malik continued, "wasn't about one bad day. It was about how pressure moves downhill. And who it lands on." Tina swallowed. "I never meant to." She stopped herself. "I guess that doesn't matter." "It matters," Malik said. "Intent matters. But impact matters more." They sat with that for a moment. Outside the office door, The restaurant kept going. Orders called out. Dishes clattering. Life refusing to pause. "I'm not here to run this place from behind a desk," Malik said finally. "I don't believe in that. I want this to be a place where people don't dread walking in. Customers or staff." Tina let out a shaky breath. "And if I mess up again?" Malik met her eyes. "Then we talk. Like this. Before it turns into something else." It wasn't a promise of perfection. It was a boundary. And somehow, that felt more solid. When they stepped back onto the floor, the energy shifted, not dramatically, but subtly. Tina moved differently. Slower. More aware. Leo caught Malik's eye again, confusion flickering across his face. Malik gave him a small nod, this time with warmth behind it. Malik stayed the rest of the afternoon. He didn't announce himself to the staff. He helped wipe tables. Refilled napkin holders. Listened. People spoke carefully at first, then more freely when they realized he wasn't there to trap them with their own words. By the time he left, the sun was low, casting long shadows across the parking lot. He sat in his car and rested his forehead against the steering wheel, feeling the ache in his chest ease just a little. Not gone. Just lighter. The next week wasn't a transformation montage. There were awkward moments. Stiff conversations. Tina stumbled more than once, catching herself mid-sentence, recalibrating. Malik had to remind himself not to micromanage, not to disappear either. Balance was harder than authority. But small things changed. The plastic bag by the register disappeared. Coins went back into the drawer. Leo started training a new hire, his confidence growing. Tina began ending shifts with a quick check-in instead of a list of complaints. Customers lingered a little longer. Smiled a little more. One afternoon, Malik came in again as just another customer. Hoodie. Jeans. No announcements. When he reached the register, Tina looked up and smiled, not a customer service smile, but a real one. "Hey," she said. "How's your day going?" "Better than last time," Malik said. She nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Outside, Malik sat on the hood of his car and watched the traffic crawl past. He thought about how close he'd come to doing nothing. To letting that moment with the coins become just another story he told himself about how things were. Change, he realized, didn't come from being seen as powerful. It came from choosing not to look away when something felt wrong. From staying when leaving would have been easier. From believing that dignity wasn't a bonus, it was the baseline. He picked up his phone and typed a message to Nia. "I'm okay. Learning some things. Hard ones. But good." He put the phone away and took a deep breath. Tomorrow would bring new problems. New mistakes. New chances to get it right or wrong. But for the first time in a long while, Malik felt like he was standing in his life instead of watching it from the sidelines. And that felt like a win worth holding on to. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to think about the last time someone made you feel small, or the last time you had the chance to make things better. Sometimes the quiet choices matter the most.